Hopefully this is working again. I have tethered it through my phone, looking right now to see if I can see myself popping up on the... Yeah, we apparently have this working again. Appears like the connection is okay. Yeah, my local cable, which I spend like $150 a month, or just up and died for no reason and is still down. So threw back on the single. It is just me at the moment. Regarding projections in chat, you should be able to see Adam shares projections for the evening, which tend to be pretty close to identical to mine. We did a show on Wednesday, and we were within a minute or a point on most guys. So we have 45 minutes to go, so I'll try to be as efficient as I can with the time here. But yeah, for the 18-20 days of preseason or whatever, this will be the second day that I will not get the full projections in, which I assure you is just as annoying for me as I put some 4+ hours into them. So let's go through these things, and then I'm going to just take a pile of questions, especially from the premium chat, hoping to solve as much difficulty as we can there. There are 20 teams, so I'm simply going to go through them and jump out at things that I think are especially interesting. For San Antonio, I expect Patty Mills and Bryn Forbes to split the time at point. I don't find either of them wonderfully valuable. If I had to play one of them, it would be Bryn Forbes at this point. I think there's more of a chance he would get a preponderance of time. Let me move my microphone back to a choicer position. Sorry if you can't hear me. So if I had to play one of those guys, I would play Bryn Forbes over Patty Mills. Orlando, obviously, the matchup is not ideal for these guys. With Rudy Gay out, I believe I saw for San Antonio in the midst of all this chaos. I already had some interest in DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, and still do. Looking at Detroit minutes, not a lot to add there. I'm just going to move on. Cleveland, you have no Kevin Love, no Cedi Osman, no Larry Nance. Last I knew, Hood was basically questionable. JR was somewhat questionable. Isaiah Taylor was going to be out. Ante Dzidzic is going to get the start there. I'm a pretty big fan of his, especially at Fanduel, where he's the minimum price. And is power forward for some odd reason. Hill will get the start again, but Ante Dzicic's the guy on that team who I would look to have the largest amount of exposure to. Brooklyn, Shabazz, and RHJ are likely out again. They played the Raptors on Wednesday. They were up 3 at halftime and lost the game by 27. That's pretty hard to do. Looking for some news, and again, keep throwing it in the... all my windows are down as well, but I'll get some refreshes going here, and hopefully if there's some news, you can drop it in the premium chat so that I can react to it. But minutes dependent, we would have interest in the same guys in Brooklyn we have in the past. The Knicks are going to start Ron Baker, Tim Hardaway Jr., Lance Thomas, Kevin Knox, and Mitchell Robinson. I don't recall Kevin Knox's price on FanDuel, but it has been ridiculously low, and if it's sitting in that same range, I think he makes a pretty compelling play when he's tending to play north of 30 minutes and against a very tepid Brooklyn squad. That makes sense for me. Mitchell Robinson is a strong GPP play at low 4s in price, and with real upside. Baby Shaq, Skinny Shaq can do a lot of interesting things. I think we have to assume Denver is not going to screw us back-to-back here. Again, Mike Malone gave numerous quotes before the last game indicating the starters would spend more time together and see more time, but the most important of those was one of these games we're going to treat like a regular season game and try and get guys minutes. So opening night, when guys are playing into the fourth quarter, it's not their first time in a fourth quarter. They've only had one other game since he issued that quote, and he played all the starters 12 minutes. As most of you doubtless remember, one would have to think he's going to step that up a peg here. Chicago, again, Parker go bench, Parker become angry. Denzel Valentine is still out. Likely the same starters as last game. In fact, I think I saw that confirmed a minute ago while scrambling through all this shit. So likely same starters and approximately similar minutes, although it wouldn't surprise me if it normalized a little more between Portis and Parker. Last game, Parker got 26 off the bench to Portis' 22 starting. They just split it. Straight 48. I imagine you see closer to 24 and 24 this time. Houston, last I saw, and again, please, specifically tag me if I get something wrong here so I can correct myself live on air. Clint Capella and Hartenstein are probable. Eric Gordon and MCW are questionable, although D'Antoni said he expected Gordon to play. Three of the other centers are out. Marquise Chris, Nene, and Joe Chi are all out. Brandon Knight is, of course, still out. J.B. Bickerstaff from Memphis has said that this is going to be a redress rehearsal since the last one was an absolute abortion. Garrett Temple is still out for that team. I think, again, you can look at what we saw last game where you got about 30 minutes out of Conley, 30 minutes out of Marc Gasol, and expect to see something similar there. The matchup obviously gives them both, I think, an opportunity to get towards some sort of ceiling there. Capella's done fine against Gasol in the past, but vice versa, it's worked okay again. Atlanta, Collins is out. Dedmon is out. They just dropped 130 on the aforementioned Spurs in regulation. They only ran an 11-man rotation that game, and that included only 5 minutes for Horter. Alex Len played 36 minutes last game after playing 14, 16, 18 the last few, and I think still goes under the radar here. We'll obviously temper expectations if Whiteside is in, but worth noting, he's 5 to 5.5 on both sides, and is a very good fantasy player. So if we think he's getting 30, 36 minutes again, especially if we find out Whiteside definitely isn't in, no issue with getting some exposure to him at the 5s. Miami, at the time of everything exploding on me 30 or 40 minutes ago, I knew that Winslow was still going to rest and that Ellington would still be out, Deion Waiters was still going to be out, James Johnson was still going to be out. I will look for some news as soon as I get a second. For Minnesota, Andrew Wiggins is going to be out for the birth of his first child. The way you've been shooting recently, don't try to ball up the diapers and shoot them in the basket. You'll leave poop on the wall. Jimmy Butler is not with the team. He is plotting revenge in his underground lair, presumably. Milwaukee, I don't think they still have Giannis out on DK, and he almost certainly is going to play. They rested basically their starting unit last game, unless you're in there counting Broggy pants, but those guys should come in and get a very reasonable game script here in the Battle of the Northern U.S. Giannis, I think my second highest projected player for today. Not that you could tell because those never got the hell in there. Sacramento at Portland, back-to-back for the Kings. They played, using that term very generously, against Utah last night. Shumpert played last night, so I expect him not to play tonight based on his conditioning. Bogdanovich is still out. Kostakoufis is still out. They played 15 guys. Fox started and saw 28. Buddy started and saw 25. Justin Jackson started and saw 21, and I believe that is all the guys who played north of 20 minutes in that game. I would still play Harry Giles, who I think played 18 last night and was exceptional like he is every game that he's healthy. If I'm looking at a tournament guy, he would probably be my first shot. I don't think Frank Mason III is out of play if you think this night it comes up. I don't think Yogi Ferrell is out of play. Portland, I like taking shots at the guards here. Obviously, they got a start last game. Terry Stotts has said he wants to get them in a game in 30-plus minutes. They've individually indicated they would like to play some games north of 30 minutes. I think those guys get 30-plus minutes tonight. Again, unless they run into the same thing Utah did last night, where Utah starters played 16, 17 minutes because Sacramento was that goddamn bad. So if Portland is up 38 at the half, then yes, I think there's a real chance they don't play the third quarter, although they still might. He wants to let those guys really stretch their legs a little bit. So I do like some McCollum in tournaments, Lillard at price where you can get him in there. Certainly looks good to me. Final game is Lakers at Golden State. LeBron is out. Rondo's out. Pope is out. Ingram is out. Josh Hart is out. They're going to look at their second unit a bit more. Lonzo, Lance, Kuzma, Beasley, and JaVale McGee are going to start. I kind of like all those guys in a game that obviously still has a whole metric but ton of pace. Between those guys, picking my favorite is tough. It's probably Kuzma, but it's all price relative. But all these guys are guys who we frequently play when they're going to have greater usage. It's like, oh, somebody's out, Lance is going to start. We really like Lance. Oh, somebody is out, Beasley is going to start. We really like Beasley. Same thing. McGee's getting a start. Boy, he can put up 30 in 20 minutes. So I don't think you overstack this game. And there is a real chance that with many of their better players out, they do get savaged by Golden State. But these guys are going to start and should see appreciable time, especially with a couple guys off the roster there. So I think at the end it ends up with, you know, minutes in the high teens for guys like Svi and guys like Ware and so on and so forth. But each of the 5 guys starting for this team does have a decent offensive side. That first unit is going to move. Golden State, Curry, Durant, and Clay have been multiply reported by several sources likely to get around 30 minutes. Draymond is still healing up, so he will not get that full amount of run. Obviously, those 3 starters are the guys we most want to look at here. I don't think I'd have a ton of interest tonight with Bonte Zizic and all the other great options out there in Damian Jones, Kevon Looney, Jordan Bell. Although Jordan Bell I'll always like in tournaments. If I think he's going to get about 20 minutes, he can just do a little bit of everything, but his price isn't even the minimum anymore. But yeah, Steph, Clay, Durant, again, chance that with the Lakers not running so many of their guys and this being a home game for Golden State, that they beat the living shit out of them, and instead of 30 minutes you get 24. That would not shock me as a thing. Someone's asking what about minimum price on Fanduel. Like I don't have time. Minimum price on Fanduel from the list I made before has Decker, who has led the Cavs in minutes this preseason, Monty Morris, Frank Mason, Yogi Ferrell, Tyus Jones, Amari Spellman, Rodions Kurix was originally on my list, Josh Okogie with Wiggins out, Anthony Tolliver, Ante Zizic, James Ennis III, who I still love and I still think plays 27 minutes, and you project for, you know, low to mid 20s, and that's been right every other time. So, you know, on FanDuel, it's hard for me to get away from Digits and James Ennis III at 2 of those forward positions. Honorable mentions, you have Selden at 36, Gerald Green at 36, Harold Giles at 39, Dwayne Wade at 39, Derrick Rose and Miles Bridges and Dwight Powell all at $3,900. So really hard not to star and scrub on FanDuel, because sure, they, you know, really have jacked the prices on Durant and Harden and Antetokounmpo and several of the other guys, but on the other hand, they are monsters. Can you do the same thing for DK? It will take me a minute, but yes, I will go through DK and give some specific comments. I want to do the best job I can to see what news has landed on my head and I haven't missed in the interim. Spolster says tonight's game will be close to a full season dress rehearsal, but the rotation will obviously be different with Winslow resting. Okay, so obviously Whiteside deserves some attention here. We shouldn't completely forget about him. Who's going to get the most usage on Minnesota? Well, you always hope it's Karl Anthony Towns, because that's the best thing for the team. But with Wiggins out of there, I bet Rose picks up proportionately the most, but Rose, Teague, and Karl Anthony Towns should do well. Powell is out against the Hornets for the Mavs. Okay, that makes things a little bit interesting there on the Mavs, because they're obviously still light on the roster. They still have no Dirk. I believe DeAndre Jordan should be back and playing tonight. He had, I believe, a death in the family caused him to not be present. I think someone mentioned Salah Mejri. I think that's a little too cute. They can run small sometimes, where you see like Maxi Kleber at the 5, and I don't think all of a sudden you get more than like 14 minutes out of Salah Mejri. And again, there's just so much better value on a 10-game slate. I'd need to be building a lot of lineups before I went there. But you now have no Harrison Barnes, probably no J.J. Barea still, though I haven't seen that confirmed. No Dirk, no Powell. That's going to open up some minutes. So Maxi Kleber, assuming is the minimum price, is not out of play in tournaments for me. He does pick up steals and blocks sometimes. You know, threatens a points, you know, rebounds, double-double most games, or actually gets there. And this is a game, I think, with some reasonable degree of pace, so we should be kind of excited. Charlotte has really been stepping up their game a little bit. So with all that going on, I think that would be a reasonable take. Sorry if I'm still scatterbrained. I'm trying to pick up everything. People asking for the projections on the site. They are not there. I don't know what happens if I try to hit the upload button here, and I think some number of teams would come through. But sure, I'm going to try that and object projections for what I think should be about 15 of the teams. So far things went a little scary. So sure, we'll just pause the show about 18 seconds, and I will try to see if I can get this to work. Hopefully I'm still connected to the internet. Who knows if that's even the case right now. This has been a pretty frustrating day. I sat down and started doing this at about 1:30, and here we are. It's been, 5 hours, and 90% of what I did is not of any use to anyone, but talk about that later. So you think Bam still has value coming off the bench? Especially with how hot he was, you'd have to really, I don't want to play Bam coming off a game that enormous. Oh my God, having lost your internet just really messes up your day. I'm just going to leave it at that, as it has screwed up everything in my entire system. Please hold just one more minute, everyone. I apologize. Trying to do everything I can to cover all the bases. Wow. I'm loading projections, which should contain most of the players, onto Osmo.com as we speak. Everything moving very slowly, but I'm not getting the giant burning thing. So we're going to move on to questions in about 30 seconds. Please stand by. I'm waiting for the local sessions manager. I wonder if this will even work, because the format's right. Here we go. I hit upload on the projections. According to this, it worked. That's the best I got for everybody. Leaving the remote server on that. Closing down this shit. Checking that. Checking Twitter alerts. Harden, Paul, too heavily owned for GPPs. They both have such a massive upside, I would disagree with that. Top 4 raw points are, Harden, Durant, and Antetokounmpo, and someone else would take me a minute. Gordon and Capella confirmed good to go. Thank you very much. All right. Let's get some questions. Let's try to make them productive and useful. Does Bembry start? I don't expect him to unless there was news that I didn't hear about. Decker and DeAndre Jordan seem like good values on DK. I am killing it. I feel closer to dead than killing it, but we're doing the best we can. You gotta roll with the punches, kids. 6,300 for DeAndre Jordan is great. I just want confirmation he's definitely in there. MCW is out. Who does it benefit? No one specifically. It's everyone on the Rockets. They just sort of adjust their rotation around a little bit. If there was one person, it would be Eric Gordon. So if the question is, projections updated, good. It's unfortunately not going to have every player in the slate because I was trying to get the last update in when the 2 things went. So there are 4 teams missing, something like that. Robinson, a good cheap center against the Nets. He's a tournament play. I can't tell you how much time he's necessarily going to play, but he has all the upside in the world. He can do steals and blocks and putbacks, obviously, and Jared Allen cannot necessarily stop, anyone at any given time. So I think there's certainly some merit to running Mitchell Robinson out there as discussed. Thoughts on Portis? I expect his minutes to come up a little bit. I think they were trying to make nice by still giving, Jabari Parker 26 off the bench and thought that would make him, shut up and be nice. And he didn't shut up and he wasn't nice. So, I think definitely some chance that that you end up picking up, say, 24 out of Portis instead of 22. But he's, been a beast, and this is a game, I think, that has a lot of pace with Denver. I mean, these are a couple of pretty bad defenses. Yeah, I have 24 minutes on Portis. Please rank your top values on DraftKings, please. Yeah, unfortunately, this is all stuff I was working on as the world came to a crashing end there. So it would be much easier for me at this point, rather than looking at every player to compare guy A and guy B and look at my projections, which I have in front of me. Ante Zizic is a good... I have projected high at 4,500. I think that's a strong play. Michael Beasley on the Lakers at 4,300 I think is a very strong play. I probably like him slightly less than Zizic. At this point, I'm literally scanning through shit, so I know About twice as many of you play that as play Fanduel. I don't want to play Ron Baker. Plenty of times their starting point guard gets 16, 18 minutes, and I would need 28 out of Ron Baker before I even considered giving that a try. Too nervous on Bielitsa. I'm not sure Caboclo plays. Hartenstein is cute in tournaments. Maybe gets 18, 20 minutes again. He is a guy with a big upside, and I'd rather have the bench guy in that matchup. But you know, if I'm making 10 minutes, I'm probably running a Hartenstein lineup if they confirm that he's playing. I'm just gonna go through all the cheap guys on DraftKings, so stand by with me as I'm just scrolling through this damn list. There's a lot of bad players in here now, aren't there? Counted like 2 guys I'd like to play so far and 14 guys who've been released in the last 24 hours. Plumlee didn't even play last game, the one on Atlanta. They actually kept him on the bench. Someone asked about him before and said, "Oh, do you think with the minutes and what happened with Len last time that Plumlee literally did not touch the floor in that game, so I would have some concern at that point." Decker at 4,200 is probably going to play like 30 minutes again with all these guys out. So he would make my list. Again, I would rather play Beasley or Djigic because, again, Decker does not do a lot. I'm going to take this up to about 4,500 and then go back to doing other things. We're obviously over 4,000 now. In tournaments, you could play Davis Bertans with Rudy Gay out. Assuming Rudy Gay is actually out. I've only heard that secondhand at the moment, but it certainly sounded like it was the truth. Mitchell Robinson at 4,500. More tournamenty than cash, but giant ceiling there, and he is picking up the start, so certainly no complaint there. Rudy's out for sure, thank you. Yeah. Oh, and at 4,500, if you click on Robinson, make sure you click on Mitchell and not the other 2 Robinsons who also cost $4,500. Which is pretty amusing, to be honest. Okay, going back and looking at more questions. Lance, what is your projection for him? I think that one made it through, but I had him around like 27 minutes and even a couple more fantasy points than that. I like Lance tonight. 29 minutes, 28.7 fantasy points. Eric Gordon, Clint Capella, good to go. Yep. Gay is out for projected 30 minutes in your projections, just so you know one plays him by mistake. Rudy Gay is out. Don't play him. It's the best I can do at the moment, and you're all saying it in chat. Rose and Aaron Gordon or Levine and Portis for a Fanduel GPP. I'd have those pretty close. If you have anyone on the opposing team, it's probably enough to push Levine Portis over for me. Otherwise, I'd play Rose and Gordon. Thoughts on Marc Gasol? Still priced very advantageously on GK, if I recall. I will take a peek at that, but you know, anytime you get about 30 minutes in, I'm projected for 32, 33 fantasy points. So yeah, strong tournament play. Let's you know, just let's use this opportunity to take a look at center for a minute there. So obviously you have Zizic as you know, a value option. Then you have Robinson as a value option, but several of the studs are kind of appealing as well. Vooch in this game has a lot of chance. I actually like LaMarcus Aldridge. It does not appear that he is, you know, but he has not had a game in this preseason that anyone has paid any attention to whatsoever. And at 6,300, that is a number that he can get on top of. So I like some tournament exposure to him. Other centers that, you know, there's Towns and Drummond. I would slightly rather play Towns for $200 more. Whiteside at 7,300 makes a whole hell of a lot of sense. You know, Nurk at 6,800 can certainly crush that price in this tournament. Marcus Gasol is, I think, just tournaments for me at 6,300. I think I'm spending elsewhere if I'm looking at it in cash. Millsap is center eligible at 5,600. There's going to be a lot of points scored in that Denver-Chicago game. JaVale McGee at 4,900 is very much in play. Brook Lopez at 4,800 is in play, certainly. So there's some centers while we're talking about other things. CP3 and Beasley, or Yogi and KD for a Fanduel GPP. It's really an issue of like which game blows out and who ends up picking up the minutes there, but I'll play CP3 and Beasley. You are much lower on Paul than Ship My Money. Okay. Without any specific context or minutes or you giving me any extra information there, I'm going to just have to take your word for it. I will confirm my projection. But I just always project him for 5 minutes less than Harden, and there's an error in my projections here. So yes, Chris Paul currently says in what uploaded 27 minutes and 16.2 fantasy points. That's supposed to be 27 minutes and 36.2 fantasy points. So yes, that was actually an error, which I imagine is pretty close. But I have him at, that's like 1.3 fantasy points a minute, which I imagine is about what he has. Stanley Johnson is playing. That's interesting. Chris Paul was a typographical error. JaMychal Green is also out tonight. Okay, so JaMychal Green and Garrett Temple are out, so we're definitely a little more interested there. You can now take a nice tournament shot at Yvonne Robb. I haven't commented it on because it was a misprint. Monte Morris still in play at the minimum on FanDuel. I think I want to spend up at point guard, but certainly he's in play at the minimum. Like, I have to think the starters finally get a lot of minutes, and so you can't still continue to get the starters getting minutes, and then Monte Morris getting 28, Malik Beasley getting 24, and Trey Lyles getting 26. Like, those numbers have got to come down. Jared, I assume that means Jarrett Allen on FanDuel in play. Yeah, of course he is. All you have seen from Denver is the starters will play more than one quarter. Yeah. Millsap or Barton is still Barton for me. Lonzo has a tremendous fantasy game, and again, with him sitting a lot of guys, I bumped him up to 28 minutes in a healthy fantasy line of a bit over 30, so more tournaments than cash for me because there's obviously some uncertainty. That's a game they should get whooped in. He just played 2 days ago for the first time off injury, but I like Lonzo in tournaments. Thoughts on Trae Young? I've liked him every game, and I still like him quite a bit. He's still just generally underpriced. He's up to 6,900 on DK, so nice. But yeah, he's gonna, you know, he's gonna average like 9 assists and 20, 22, 23 points. So he's just gonna average 35 fantasy points or so. So the prices are just too low for him on a couple places. I think he's 61 on FanDuel. That's pretty cheap and certainly still in play on DraftKings. You eliminated the minutes when importing to Cruncher. Well, that would explain it. Jokic, LaMarcus Aldridge, or Whiteside. Raw points, I'd still have to rank them Jokic, Whiteside, LaMarcus Aldridge, but they'd be a little condensed, and just the biggest reason I like Aldridge is the ownership. You're going to get him really low. Jokic or Whiteside, I'm still taking Jokic. I had them projected for about the same minutes. Jokic has a much better game, and I think you even win the ownership game a little bit there. Who would you start your DK build with, or do you just jam in a couple studs? You know, I like Beasley and Digits to start for value. With the way there's again, I've been talking recently, the fact that their prices have a big curve on them, and that to get from a guy who we expect to score 30 to a guy we expect to score 50 on FanDuel takes us from a salary of 7,000 to a salary of 11,000, and on DraftKings right now it takes you from a salary of 6,000 or 7,000 to a salary of 8,500. There's just a big cap on shit, and so it's really hard for me not to want to find a few decent value plays and then just pack in Harden and Giannis, or Harden and or Giannis and or Towns and or Durant. I guess is where I would start looking at that list, you know. Like Whiteside at 7,300 is a lot less, but there's just some of these super monster top cap guys are very inexpensive. How much time do we have? 15 minutes. Zeller or McGee on Fanduel GPP? Definitely McGee for me there. What center on Fanduel? Mitchell Robinson at 4,100 was the one I was toying with before in tournaments. You know, Zubac is the minimum, and with the guys they have out there, he's going to pick up a couple of shifts. I'd much rather play Mitchell between those two guys, but someone asked specifically about him. You can still play Bam at 4,100, but again, I think he's back in his 14-minute role. JaVale McGee at 4,200 is really, really good, and, you know, hard to get past if you're looking for a cheap center. You can Cody Zeller at 4,600, but that's a pivot off McGee basically at that point. Ante Zizic, by the way, is a minimum price power forward if you're looking for him. I mentioned I like Alex Len in tournaments at $5,100. He played 36 minutes last game. They didn't even bring Plumlee in. Jared Allen at 56 is certainly credible in tournaments. Whiteside at 69 is a strong cash option. Nice. You know, Vooch at 77 is tournaments for me. Jokic at 99 is tournaments for me. Towns at 11.2 is tournaments for me. Drummond at 9.9. I mean, it's just Whiteside is 6.9 compared to Drummond at 9.9 and Towns at 11.2. It's pretty hard for me to get away from Whiteside at that price. So at price, Whiteside, JaVale McGee are the guys who jump out like, hey, we're, you know, radically underpriced. Yeah, there's a couple, you know, medium price tournament plays at point guard I like. Like on FanDuel point guard, you have both Doncic and Dennis Smith Jr. in the mid-6s. Zach LaVine's a point guard for whatever reason at 6'3". Teague Wiggins is out at 6'8". I'm not going to play Chris Dunn at that price, but Bledsoe at 7'4". I would play all those guys before I got into Lonzo at 7'6", just for minutes. But Lonzo does have him a very, very friendly DFS game. Any mispricings on DK? Well, yeah, Harden and Antetokounmpo and Durant and Towns are just following the normal way they price guys to the hell cheap. Michael Beasley and Zizic are the value guys I think are closest to underpriced on that site. I mean, Jokic at 7K, Lillard at 7K. Those are a couple monsters there. Like, they can both put up some real damage and are both in spots I really like. And again, if the games don't blow out and the coaches don't go full fuck stick, and let me tell you, Mike Malone and Terry Stotts will share a fuck stick at the ice cream stand, but you know, real chance they play 30 minutes. Any interest in Forbes against Orlando? Yeah, I have a non-zero amount of interest in Forbes. Again, I literally projected him and Mills for 24 minutes apiece. I think they split him. I don't think they bring you know, Nick Johnson in, but he's even, you know, less sort of a fantasy asset than Derek White was, and I was concerned there for all those reasons. But now you have Rudy Gay out, and that does pick up the ceiling there a little bit. So wouldn't mind stacking him with, you know, Aldridge. But I have, I'm sure Bryn Forbes is, I'm guessing he's 3,500 on FanDuel. I'm just going to throw out a bullet. Yeah, so, like, I have no issue running that play. You might get lucky he gets 28 minutes and not 24 minutes, and you can do a lot there. So, sure, I have some interest. Not a value play. I'm like, wow, that's a guy who's mispriced. But he certainly can get there. Luka Doncic projections? Yeah, I ran that through, but I can't remember if it was before or after the crash. I have Luka Doncic for 28 minutes and 30.6 fantasy points. I like him quite a bit, but everyone likes him quite a bit, and they you know, really priced him up quite significantly. So, you know, the DK price, it's really hard to play. I think Doncic on DK is 6-7. Like, I like that a lot, but, you know, Jokic is 7,000. Lillard is 7,000. Like, it's really hard for me to go from those guys and get 300 less and play Luka. I really like Luka, but I don't think he has the usage to carry off that kind of number like some of the other massive studs at that price level. Dame and Lonzo or Curry and Trey on FanDuel. Probably Curry and Trey, but that's really good. Giles or Kleber? Yeah. God, probably Kleber at this point. Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with Sacramento with those minutes. I just don't know. Giles certainly, you know, could get 25 minutes tonight and score 37, but there's obviously a fair bit of concern there. Rank Len, Allen, and Lopez on Fanduel. I would have Lopez at the bottom just because of minutes. And like I'm a big Brook Lopez fan, but he's going to play 20 minutes, give or take 2 probably. Len and Allen are, I think I have both projected around 30 minutes. Chris Paul and Jordan Bell versus Marc Gasol and LaMarcus Aldridge in a DK GPP. That's close for me, but I would play Gasol and Aldridge. Jordan or Whiteside in cash. I would play Whiteside until I get specific news that Jordan's playing. I think it was a death in the family or something, so I'm fairly certain he's there, and maybe this news has come out. Again, the last hour for me has been just one mess, but I would really want DeAndre Jordan news before I saw that. Even then, I might think about Whiteside. Giannis versus Harden is Harden for me at the moment, but close. Capella minutes, I just have him at 24. I don't know what Adam is going to come out with. I believe you asked him. Cash game, 6,200 left. Who do I take? Lino Lonzo is 5'9", and he does enough things that's tempting to answer, but I got a feeling there's someone I like better in cash. Taurean Prince at 62 doesn't bother me. Teague doesn't bother me. I don't love either of them. Jarrett Allen doesn't bother me. I would probably play Taurean Prince. You still like Trey Lyles? Less. He still carries a big upside, but I do think the starters play more now, and when the starters play more, the bench does play a little less. Of course, they're going to thin down other parts of the bench first. They're going to take minutes away from Morris and Beasley and Juancho Hernan-Gomez and other guys before they take them away from Trey. But I would guess his minutes come down by 2 or 3. FanDuel GPP, Decker, Whiteside, or Drummond, Kuzma. That can't be how the pricing works there. Decker's 3,500, Whiteside is 6,900, Drummond is 9,900, which would mean Kuzma would be $500 or something. So I'm very confused. But if somehow you have the choice of Decker and Whiteside or Drummond and Kuzma, play Drummond and Kuzma. But it says FanDuel GPP. That seems strange. Forbes or Lance? Lance. It is, sorry, opposite. So it's Drummond, Decker, or Whiteside, Kuzma is your question, I think. Okay. I would play Whiteside, Kuzma. Those of you who are Awesemo Premium members, Adam is shipping some of his highest owned players into the chat there, and they are not mine, so I will not repeat them. But I do have confidence in his abilities. So, yeah, something to look at there. Looking for more questions. Let's go over here. Jokic. All right. Jabari or Batum. Between those two guys, I would actually play Jabari Parker. Jokic or Whiteside on DK. I have to play Jokic. Favorite utility under 5,300 on DK. Not Lance in cash. Okay. I mean, Zizic at 53. At 45, rather, might be it. But let me look for guys who cost a little more. See if there's anyone I would actually project over Ante. It'd be really close with Maxi Kleber and Evan Fournier and Jijic. I would have them all projected pretty similarly. Just because I expect Fournier to get 28, 30 minutes. Same thing with Cody Zeller. I expect him to get 24 minutes. And DJ Augustine isn't crazy either. It's against Dallas. I'd say Cody Zeller is where I would come out on that, but very close. How many minutes for Draymond? I think I ended with 18. Is DeRozan a play? Absolutely. FanDuel, Dennis Smith Jr. CP3 stack. I have no issue with those plays whatsoever. Harden and Greek in lineup or balance out starters. Well, the thing is, on DK, you can do that without having to sacrifice anything, really. So I think Harden and Greek are probably my 2 highest scoring players on the evening, and you can play them without sacrificing anything by playing Lance and Beasley and Ante, and, you know, you don't really have to give up much. Expected ownership on Jokic on FanDuel. 1.5%. 2.5%. McCollum, Giannis, CP3, Kuzma, Robinson, or KD, Harden, Lance, Barton, Jokic. This is definitely the only 5x5 I'm doing today, but okay. I would play KD, Harden, Lance, Barton, Jokic out of those two quintrinaries. Back to the premium chat for some more questions, looking for some news. Please, anyone who can do a decent job. I was supposed to have Adam here, so I can't. I'm looking at the list of Adam's highly owned players and seeing if I have any commentary to add to it. I don't think Svi gets enough minutes that I would have any Svi. I think Svi gets 18 or 20 minutes. They got a lot of guys out there and trying to figure out. Now, you could. And figuring out the Lakers' minutes was a bit of a thing for me. I only think they ended up with like 11 or 12 guys. They're obviously resting a pile of guys. But hard for me to get up and going about Mikhailuk. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he's got a lot of Beasley and a lot of... not as much Djigic, but again, Djigic is a far stronger Fanduel play, which he's not taking into account with these numbers here. Fanduel, he's power forward and basically sitting on the minimum price, so some significant amount of interest there. $9.5 left, DraftKings, GPP, forward utility. Who should I play? Beasley and Djigic in. I'm fine with those two guys. When they tell me to pick two guys, that's more time than I have to give with 4 minutes until lock. Reggie Jackson or Levine is Levine for me. I still think Reggie Jackson's on 24 minutes or so. Harris versus Fournier on DK. I'm assuming that's Gary. Matchup, I'll go with Gary Harris there. Second best cheap power forward on FanDuel. Do they have Decker at small? It would be Sam Decker if he's a power forward. Giles is 3,900 there, if I recall, actually, so it's probably going to be Giles for me. JaMychal Green is out, so actually, if you want the minimum, I'd play a Von Rob. So Djigic, Rob, and again, I really like saving at that position because spending up, Blake at 82, Aldridge at 82. Again, I like, but he's not cheap. Gordon at 73, there's some real upside there, but there's, two guys at 35 and one guy at 39, all of whom I would project for north of 25 fantasy points. It's pretty exciting. Back to the premium chats. Would you punt with Djigic and Kleber on FanDuel or try to get Aldridge or Blake for the second spot? I would probably punt with some combination of Djigic, Kleber, Rob, and Giles. I like them all at those prices. Melo, Barton, or Bridges on DK. I have Barton for 5 or 6 more fantasy points than the others. And Bridges' minutes, unfortunately, are falling off. Djigic and Millsap or Portis and Lyles on FanDuel. Djigic and Millsap in cash. Portis and Lyles is a fine tournament pivot. CP3 or Steph? Steph. DeAndre looks like he's playing. All right, looks like DeAndre Jordan is going to suit up. Certainly makes some sense in tournaments. Damari Carroll out again, apparently with an ankle injury, even though they said last game they were sitting him to get a look at Rodion Kurucs. That makes Rodion Kurucs a little more interesting, but it also gives some more room for Karis LeVert to stretch his legs, so any exposure you had there is a little safer. Lance, KD, Barton, or Decker, Curry, Aldridge, in cash. Lance, KD, Barton, in cash. Need a guard on DK, have 7,000 yet left. Isn't there Damian Lillard? Pretty sure there's Damian Lillard. My answer will be Damian Lillard. That was easy. Jaren Jackson getting the start with Green out. Yeah, makes sense. And definitely they stretch out his minutes a little bit. Jaren Jackson Jr. is pretty, again, has a lot of potential there. He is 6,000 on DK. Oy. You guys just took a couple of the guys and just really placed them out of range. And he is 54 on FanDuel. Like, nice to see. And if I'm making 10 teams, maybe I show up with a share. But there's just so many guys who are priced so much more advantageously on both sides. LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin, or Barton and Durant. I have the second one for exactly 79 and the first one for about sec. I have the second one projected for 1 more point. I would play Aldridge and Griffin for the ownership because Durant at least is going to be very highly owned. Drummond or Giannis? He's asking Adam, so I will let Adam answer. You're coming in late. Join the club. We are 30 seconds from lock or something. Thoughts on Harden coming in late? Love Harden. You're saying you're coming in late, not James Harden. Yeah, it's Harden in the preseason. Harden has been the best player in the preseason the last 2 years. Period. It's not actually an arguable sentence. They don't watch his time. They give him plenty of minutes. He isn't shy about it, and he kicks people hard in the face. So that's my take there. Drum or Giannis is Giannis for me. Not terribly close. It's just an upside thing. Like, even if you told me I have Drummond and Giannis projected exactly the same in a tournament and I have to pick one of them, I'm going to take Giannis almost every time because Giannis has a slightly better floor and a massively higher ceiling. How many fantasy points are you going to get out of Drummond, really? Like, 60 out of him is pretty rare. Giannis is going to get 60 10, 12, 14 times this year. So just the ceiling is so much better. Like, they both look really good, but even if you told me I had them both projected for... I have Giannis projected higher anyway, but if I had them both projected for 38 fantasy points, I'm still taking Giannis because there's a 15% chance he gets 60 as opposed to a 3% chance for Drummond. And that is it. That was, so we got in 45 decent minutes at the end there. I think we covered a lot of ground and got through some things. You're welcome. Sorry for obviously the shindig. Sorry to Adam, who got unceremoniously dropped, but I appreciate him scrambling in the chat to answer some questions. I think at the end of the day he probably appreciated the time to work on his lineups a little bit more. I will be on tomorrow with an NFL show at 2:30, which I'm looking forward to hosting. It's going to be a fun game show type style thingamajig that I hope you'll stop by for. That should be enjoyable. Congrats on all the winners, especially the last week has been pretty good. So that was gratifying. You got Jakob Poeltl starting at 0.4% starting for San Antonio. I like it. I'm not that surprised either because last game they gave Powell like 30 minutes, which seemed a little strange. Yeah, it's a shame this happened on the last day of preseason. I will call the cable company and figure out what the hell happened, but it's a rarity for me. It happens about twice a year, but there is one. I guess it's better than the preseason, and I managed to get back with 45 minutes to go, so not perfect, but good enough that hopefully we still covered most of your questions, and you got 80% of my projections and 100% of Adam's. So we did the best we could. Let's. I'm gonna look at ownership real quick because everyone likes it when we look at ownership. So I will do that. Late swap question: Giannis, Decker, Curry, or KD, Barton, Jokic? I would play KD, Barton, Jokic. Again, just because those three guys can literally score almost 200 points. It's pretty hard to get that out of the first one. Giannis can put up a super ceiling. Curry can do it a little less often just because of, you know, how shot dependent his game is, but certainly it can happen. But, you know, Sam Decker is just getting you 30, and you can have Barton get you 45. Like that has a possibility. So just upside projection, I would want that. Ownership for the first slate. Number one, 3 games, by the way, and the most owned guy was Ante Zizic at only 23%, so you got to be excited about that. Aldridge at 16.6%, that's pretty sharp. Britton Forbes at 12, Sam Decker at 11, Andre Drummond at 10.5, DeMar DeRozan at 9.4, I like that. Aaron Gordon at 6.3, I like that. Blake Griffin at 5.8, I like that. Like, these are all, you know, good numbers. Kemba Walker at 5.3, I like that. Luka Doncic at 5%. I mean, it's a tough spot, but 5%, you got to like it. Maxi Kleber got all the way up to 4.75. There's some smart people out there this year. Good job. DSJ, Dennis Smith Jr., 3.6. Fournier, 3.5. Dante Cunningham, 2.23. No. George Hill, 2%. Okay. Jordan Clarkson, 1.86. Okay. DeAndre Jordan, 1.74% is excellent. Jonathan Isaac, 1.7. Sure. Colin Sexton, 1.6. Okay. Batum, 1.5. Lamb, 1.5. Hernan Gomez is tough. He hasn't been getting the minutes. Augustine at 1.3. And there we are. Out of a full 20 teams, not too shabby. So, making a last check on any questions of any reasonable quantity, and then gonna go take some aspirin. I have a splitting headache, and holy Jesus. When you turn off Chrome for a second, turn it back on, some fucking beeps. Is Trier a decent play? Yeah, he's got enough upside, and the matchup is one we like and certainly could work out for him. So I don't have a problem with Alonso in this. Nearly 2K empties on DK $10. Nice. I mean, they give DraftKings some credit. They threw out 125K tonight instead of even 100, which still would have been much more impressive than the 70 we got on Fanduel. So, is Vonla going to smash Brooklyn? He could. Like, he sort of folded last time, but you know, in the game before that, he played 13 minutes and had a double-double. I don't know. All right, so I'm going to thoughts on Jamal Murray. Again, you'll get him in an ownership that makes him just fine for me. He'll be 1.5% owned, so that's pretty exciting. Ish 1% on DK. Yeah, I guess, you know, Ish could get going there, but just I think Reggie's back. Reggie starts. Reggie plays. He only played 20 minutes last game, and that's why you got 28 minutes of Ish. If Reggie only plays 20 minutes again, then okay, I'll get 28 minutes of Ish, but I think like 24-24 is a slightly more likely occurrence. Giles or Len, if they're the same price, I'm going to take Alex Len at this point. I cannot ignore the massive shit ton of time they threw at him last game. 36 minutes is 36 minutes, and they had healthy dudes on the bench. You know, I'd like to get some news. I'll see if I can zone in on what Lloyd Pierce is saying. Again, one of the nice things about being a member of the premium at awesemo.com is frequently I'm spending 11 hours a day in the Slack. So we'll start working on the late slates now, the 7:30, the 8, the 10:30, etc. So, and that is it. So apologies again for the technical difficulties. Thanks to everyone for their patience and for helping me rally. Thanks to Ship My Money DFS Adam for jumping in the chat and covering me for 15 minutes while I tried to get stuff running again. Although I've seen some pretty pictures of, pretty funny pictures rather, of me when the internet would turn back on for 90 seconds and I didn't realize it, just sitting here looking and doing this. And I was apparently live and streaming for part of it without knowing it. So that's funny stuff. I've seen some funny screenshots of me with my O face on. That being said, I will be back tomorrow talking football, and I believe Tuesday is the big day, and we'll be getting into some real regular season NBA. So until then,